Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. And thank you for joining us for this latest Nichia webinar brought to you in association with ARC magazine on the future of office lighting. It's an incredibly prevalent topic at the moment, and it's one that we've covered fairly extensively within the magazine in recent months for obvious reasons. And today we are joined by a panel of experts from LightingEurope, BDP, Regent Lighting and Nichia, who are going to ask what is next for office lighting in a post-pandemic world. Each of our four panelists will give a short presentation before we turn things over to a Q&A session where you can ask our panel your specific questions. I'm sure you all know the drill by now, but you can ask your questions at any point using the Q&A icon, which should be visible at the bottom of your screen. So before we dive in, let's quickly introduce the panel in a bit more detail. First up, we'll have Ourania, who joined LightingEurope as Secretary General in 2017, and she has more than 15 years experience of advocating for membership associations. Following Ourania will be Mark, who is Head of Lighting at BDP. He has more than 30 years experience in theatre and architecture, and human interaction with architecture through the medium of light is central to his philosophy and practice. Up next will be Kornelius, who is Design and Innovation Project Manager at Regent Lighting. Kornelius has worked at Regent Lighting for nearly a decade and has more than 20 years experience in design, product invention and R&D. And then finally, we'll hear from Kay, who is Manager of Lighting Business Planning at Nichia, a master's graduate from Kobe University in astrophysics. Kay joined the Nichia Corporation back in 2003, and since 2014 has worked as a business planning manager in the lighting division. So without further ado, let's get cracking with the presentations. And for that, I will hand you over to Ourania.
Thank you, Matt, and good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here today with you to tell you how LightingEurope is working in order to make sure that what's next for office lighting is delivering the value of lighting. First, a bit about LightingEurope as a trade association. We represent companies that manufacture lighting. That means that manufacture the light source, the luminaires, the lamps, and the control gear. We are representing 33 members, a combination of companies and national associations representing manufacturers. So altogether, that's 1,000 companies from across Europe. We're based in Brussels, so we are the voice of the lighting industry here, talking regularly with regulators to influence policies and rules. And we also offer a compliant platform where companies can exchange views on technology trends and on regulatory trends. And before I continue, I just want to quickly check that you can all see my screen correctly, and that is not the case. Let me try that one more time with my apologies. Here we go. There we go. Thank you. So in LightingEurope, the industry set out a vision of what will deliver value for people and what will deliver growth for the industry in the next few years by 2025. And we evaluated our progress in 2019 and agreed that we are still on track, and this is still a relevant vision. So when you look at the graph, what you see, what it says is that LEDification and sustainability will deliver significant energy savings and environmental benefits. And these are things that are quite well known to the lighting industry, and they're also quite well known to the market and to regulators. In LightingEurope, we believe that the real value for people and for this industry will come from intelligent lighting systems and from human-centric lighting. So to answer the question of what's next for office lighting, I think it's fair to say that energy efficiency will still be a major driver. We still have infrastructure that can transition to LED, and we see that there's a regulatory push for that transition. We have rules coming out that will ban the remaining halogens by September next year, and most general lighting T8s will be banned in September 2023. So also with policies and legislation, we're pushing people to transition to LED products. There's also a clear understanding that lighting systems with controls, things like daylight or presence sensors, can contribute even further to these energy savings. And so again, here in Brussels today, we negotiate new rules and policies on smart readiness indicators for buildings, on managing eco-design requirements for building automation and control systems, and even on setting new energy performance targets for buildings in new legislation. But we need to go beyond energy savings, clearly, because in this industry, we have today the science that demonstrates the biological impact of lighting. We know that our circadian rhythm, our body clock, is timed to cycles of light and darkness. And we know that we have the technologies and the products that can deliver those kind of biological benefits also indoors. Now, how to do that, I agree with you, is not always easy, but in Lighting Europe, we're convinced that human-centric lighting fostered by intelligent lighting systems will be the next thing for office buildings also. And we expect to see an increased focus on indoor environmental quality. So it all takes some effort because there is no one size fits all. There's no amazing recipe that everybody can just take and apply in any given space. Good lighting setup really depends on the application and the actual environment we're in. There is a standard for office lighting, the EN 12464-1, which sets out the relevant parameters and minimum requirements for lighting, looking at color rendering, horizontal and vertical illuminance, the uniformity of that illuminance, glare, and color. And in Lighting Europe, we have really long discussions about what is good lighting, frankly. It's really not an easy one, because we agree that at its core, it addresses the basic issues of safety, of the requirements of the task that's performed in a space, and the needs of the occupant. So when designing good lighting for an environment, we think you need to take the following parameters into account: the light levels and the distribution, the quality of the light source. You need to introduce lighting that is tuned and tunable. You need to introduce controls to allow people to personalize the lighting. And you need to also take into account the actual daylight in that environment and work with it. Now, instructions can be found in the standard I referenced, but we recommend going beyond those minimum parameters. The standard was made initially only for visual tasks, and we can do better. And people like more. They like better than that. Now, people question the value of human-centric lighting and more generally of indoor environmental quality because they struggle to calculate the return on investment. I mean, energy savings is easy. It's clearly good for the planet, and you can see the difference in your monthly energy bill. But if we think about that in a bit of a different way, when you look at a company or when you look at a building, the biggest asset and often the biggest budget line is the people, it's the staff. And we have studies that show that people can perform better when they are exposed and benefit from better lighting. So we see better performance in employees in office spaces, in workers in factory shop floors, or even of our children doing better in school. So there is that evidence there. And just for the discussion today, I came across this example last week from the World Green Building Council. It's the workplace in London that Landsec set up. And they decided that they wanted to go for two objectives. On the one hand, a green building, so really address the energy efficiency and the green elements of that infrastructure. And on the other hand, they really wanted to think about the health and the well-being of the people in that building and to deliver a quality indoor environment. So with only 3% increase in the cost, 3% increase in the total cost of the project, they had 30% more employees saying that they felt the new space allows them to work more productively. 30% more people working in that space felt they could be more productive for 3% extra cost of the project. You see that there was a 25% increased satisfaction with the lighting levels. What they did there is they installed energy efficient LED circadian lighting. They allowed for various scenarios in meeting rooms, lighting scenarios to adapt to the different tasks that could possibly take place in that space. They even installed an LED light well to bring high intensity light to the middle of that floor where the light was not arriving. 3% cost, 30% people satisfaction. Now, the other question is, okay, will people actually do this though? Will anyone actually go for this, especially in today's situation? And the answer is yes. There is a clear government drive in favor of renovation. And actually renovation is being presented as, first of all, a main motor to deliver on our targets for being carbon neutral by 2050. And it's also being presented as a way to get out of the current economic impact of the pandemic, to stimulate, again, the economy. Last week, the European Commission published the Renovation Wave Initiative. That's a policy that sets out the objective to double renovation rates over the next few years, double renovation rates. Because we calculate that about 75% of the existing building stock is energy inefficient. It was constructed before all the current legislation on performance came into place. Yes, it will come at a cost. So I think the calculation the Commission made was that to deliver on these objectives, we need to spend around 275 billion euros per year. And there is today an intention. We are negotiating the budget of the EU for the next 7 years in the European Parliament and among our national governments in the Council. And there is money that has been earmarked to support and match funding from public authorities who are encouraged to renovate their public buildings like hospitals, schools, administrations, and also to provide private lending via private banks to stimulate private investment. So the policy intention is there, the regulator wants this, and the money should be there as well, is earmarked. And in LightingEurope, what we're doing is working to influence the conditions for that funding to make sure that there is no renovation without lighting, and that what we do install is good quality lighting based on a good design. Now, last but not least, one more thing we need to, I think, acknowledge is that office spaces will also be driven in the future by desire to create a space that is safe, where people can collaborate and coexist with a minimum risk to their health. And so going beyond general lighting, we need to also think about how UVC disinfection technology is a key element in the integral design of these safe spaces. It's a mature, established technology. It's been around for over 100 years, and it has been proven to inactivate, without exception, all the bacteria and viruses it has been tested against, including SARS. So if I were to summarize, in LightingEurope, we think that the future of office lighting will be driven by energy efficiency, but there is a clear acknowledgement that we must go beyond, and we must deliver environments that people enjoy in, working in, and existing in, and that they thrive in. So there is a big potential there for intelligent lighting systems and human-centric lighting. There are policies that are pushing for renovation and are pushing for a transition away from the conventional lighting to LED technologies and systems. There's standards there. They set minimum requirements. Let's work together to improve these, and let's design spaces that go beyond those minimum requirements. And we also have to acknowledge that safe spaces where people can coexist and not be afraid of catching COVID or even the common flu one day soon will be a big element driving the future of lighting in offices. So with that, I'd like to thank you very much for your attention, and I'd like to pass you on to Mark. And I look forward to sharing views with everybody at the end. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. I've been asked to talk today about what's next for office lighting and to consider what makes good office lighting and how it's going to change. So what's the future? And what are those key drivers? And at BDP, we always use people as our guide to answering questions such as this. It's very important to us that we approach the process of design not from a technology point of view, but from a very human point of view, and analysing people's needs and concerns, and to use those as our guide to our design principles. And so, what are the key drivers? And sustainability is without doubt the #1 driver. We only have one world. We don't have four, which currently is the number of worlds we need to have if we're going to carry on consuming resource in the way in which we are. We just don't have them. So, and the climate emergency makes this an imperative that we address now, and all of us have a part to play in that. And of course, part of that sustainability drive, which Rani was referring to, has been a lot to do with energy efficiency and climate change and getting CO2 down. And LED-ification has made a major contribution to that. which I think the lighting industry can be very proud about. There's more to go for absolute sure. The renovation project, I think, is very, very key. Using lighting control, intelligent design, all of those things can continue to make a difference. But I think what we need to do in reducing this is well known, and it's almost more of the same. I think the control thing is very interesting, because as we go more and more into wireless, and where data becomes an increasingly important aspect of the systems that we provide, that will lead us into smart buildings and big data and all those kind of things. But the bits that are really preying on our attention at the moment in BDP is issues outside of global warming and the CO2 question. And one of them is what happens at end of life. That there is a big toxicity problem with our products, and LEDs have to an extent exacerbated that because of various reasons. But this is a picture of a plastics island off the Caribbean. We really certainly do have a job to do in terms of recyclability, renewing, avoiding use in the first place, reusing and recycling where we but so thinking about end of life is very, very important to us. But also beginning of life and resource shortage, I think, is something that we don't talk about enough and is really, really important. This graph shows how many years we've got left of certain commodities. I'm not going to go through this in detail, but a really interesting one is copper, which, if we carry on at this rate, it's meant to run out in 2040, or possibly we can extend that to 2050 if we reduce its use. But actually, with the electrification of the grid, the move towards smart cars and electric cars, actually this is going to increase. So we're going to run out of copper. Now, maybe it's not 2040, maybe it's not 2050, but it sure as eggs is not 2100. So we really, really need to think about resource management, and perhaps not digging so much out of the ground and dumping it back 20 years later, which is really leading to the circular economy debate. We're doing a big push on this in BDP to work out what actually the circular economy means specifically for the lighting industry. And I'm really encouraged by the contribution, in fact, the stimulation of the debate from the manufacturing community. But we've also been talking to clients, contractors, FM, and it's on everybody's agenda, and there seems to be a real will to make it happen, and the professional organizations are on it as well. But I think one of the things I really we need to do some work on is, what does a circular economy product look like, and what kind of criteria does it need to fulfill? And for us, daylight is absolutely central part of this debate. It's the most sustainable source of light. It is circadian in its very nature, and it also has various disinfection properties. So whilst artificial lighting manufacturers can't do a lot about it, as designers, we absolutely can. We need to put it right for front and center of all of our designs, and try and influence and work with our architectural colleagues to bring that into the world. There's been talk about circadian lighting, where we don't have access to daylight, but I think we should be aware that we live in biological caves, and that's not great. And there's all sorts of things we can do in terms of human behavior to get us into access to real daylight. And what circadian lighting is not, is just a color change down light. It's much more complicated to that, and just and I think it's well known in the panel. But just one thing I would say: in the evening, have a look at where the evening light is. It's not high in the sky. What we really need to do in our lighting environments is bridging for variety, so that we're not only lighting from the ceiling, we're also lighting from desk mounted and floor mounted tasks, so we get that variation in height as well as intensity and color. And there is all sorts of other wellness aspects which lighting is beginning to touch upon. Biophilia is one of those, but the debate is much wider than just energy efficiency. And Corona, well, what about Corona? There's a lot of debate on what this means for the lighting community and workspaces in generally. The fact that the demise of the workspace and we're all going to work at home, I think, is overstated. We've just done a wellness survey of our staff. 33% of people are complaining of musculoskeletal problems within 6 months. We really haven't got it all just by working at home. So the death of the workplace is overstated, and I think, but it will be reinvented. How will it be reinvented? Well, I think all the existing trends are going to be accelerated. So what's been happening will happen just a lot faster. I think open plan will go a lot, but where it exists, I'll give you a few clues as to what's happening. This is our office, recently re-illuminated. It's direct, indirect. It's not just direct. It's not surface mounted, and it's not recessed. So that really bright ceiling plane combined with adequate task lighting. We have task lighting as well. It's daylight controlled, it's present controlled, actually using a Kasambi wireless system. So we were also going into where we didn't have any control before. This is a retrofit, by the way, and produced a lot of energy savings. But they're also very discreet. This fitting is 25 mil square. And if you can see the fitting in the foreground, but if you come back to this, you can guess the fitting, find the fitting at the back, because they're so discreet, they will almost entirely disappear. It's all about the light, not about the light fitting. And then the land securities. Thank you, Ourania, for talking about that. That's one of our projects. So it's really good to see it's objectively performing so well for the client. But the reason I've got this slide in is this is land security's front door. This is not a hotel. And I think what's going to be very much more prevalent is workspaces brand expression, both to staff and also to clients. This is another one for PwC. You can see that the mixture of workspace, F&B, biophilia, brand expression. They're an accountancy company, but you wouldn't guess it from this. Workspaces meeting and digital and physical interaction. This is from that project, a large format touch screen, which allows global conferencing as well as meeting and expressing. Very loose fit, you see, it's not a lecture theatre with fixed seating, very flexible. And then workspace environments are going to be very varied. They're going to allow people to choose how to work in the way in which they want to. You will notice on the left, there's team space, ad hoc, which can, but then there's individual workspaces as well. And then on the right, this is more of a client drop-in collaborative space, task-based lighting, ample daylight, and you're going to get these kind of varieties of space increasingly. And then just a little bit of techie stuff to work at the end. I think with the sustainable economy thing, we're going to be looking for plug-and-play solutions, which allows us to put in a variety of toolkits into flexible infrastructure that allows us to reuse luminaires at end of life very, very simply. So I think it's evident that to apply any of these solutions, the contribution of LED and luminaire manufacturers is going to be vital to provide the tools that we need as designers to reassure that our vision and our clients' needs and desires are implemented. So thank you very much.
So thank you, Mark. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for listening. My name is Kornelius Reutter. I am project manager for design and innovation at Regent Lighting. So who is Regent? We are a lighting manufacturer based in Basel, Switzerland, founded 1908, family business in 4th generation. We are market leader in Switzerland and one of the top players in Europe. So what are the market fields of Regent? We are specialized in office and education, in industry and retail and hospitality lighting. So what fixtures work best in office environments? In a very simple approach, we can divide between fixed and flexible luminaires. Here we see a range of fixed luminaires, recessed, semi-recessed, pendant, as we have also seen, downlight and wall washer, for example. In the flexible section, we see on the right a freestanding luminaire providing light in both directions. In the middle, a minimalistic task luminaire, and to the left, a very powerful uplight. So what solutions address the office needs? For us, solutions should be personal, smart, and of very high quality. So what is behind these words? Personal means to have a strong focus on the user's needs. For example, to have a light even tailored down to the individual, improving and enriching his personal experience of each activity. Smart means the use of sensors, the cloud, data analytics, and algorithms for helpful new products and services. And high quality is a very big field. It starts with fulfilling, of course, like the norms, like lux levels, glare. But then very important is an aesthetical design concept, which is in our case very much related to architecture. It's very important to have an intuitive user interface to control these coming more and more complex functions of a luminaire. And of course, it should be a sustainable concept for the implementation of the construction. So let's step into some situations and solutions. Here we see a room who can be used for different purposes. For example, education, flexible working, a meeting room. And it's realized by very big luminaires illuminating the floor, the wall, and the ceiling. It's realized by a circular luminaire with a slim aluminum frame, providing direct and indirect light, and it's completely glare-free. There are different versions of this, giving choice for optional space design. Here we see an open space office with different activity zones. It's provided with endless linear fixtures, fully integrated in ceiling and architecture. Here we see a similar linear fixture in a semi-recessed version on the left, and in the middle in a suspended version. The luminaire behind is a slim modular panel, which can be seamless mounted. And it's also no intervention in the ceiling necessary, so electronics and drivers, they are all in. On top of such a linear line, there could be a rollable endless diffuser. This is on the first hand very good for transport, but this means also that the last layer is seamless, so there are no cuts in between, and it's completely glare-free. And even though this glare protection is very high, the luminous surface is realized in a very fine granular structure. Here we see two flexible luminaires, freestanding flexible luminaires. The luminaire concept is based on a modular light panel. So this panel can be clustered on one lamp mast in 1, 2, 3, or 4 combination, thus saving resources and also visual space. These modular light panels provide a double asymmetric, high sophisticated beam, which enables a user-specific light. Here we see an office landscape equipped with these freestanding luminaires, in this case with a tunable white version. And this tunable white version is controlled by an intuitive graphical app. So it's possible to adjust for each user the illuminance and the color temperature between 2007 and 65 Kelvin. And it's also possible to choose dynamic light scenarios, for example, following the daylight, or even go into more personalized scenarios. Here we see these freestanding luminaires connected via the cloud. There are integrated modules for sensors, cloud, and intelligence. So those sensors, they measure the room climate. So they measure the illuminance on the table, the user presence, temperature, the CO2 equivalent, and the TVOC, so this little dust, which also defines the air quality. The measured data is then connected through cloud, and in a dashboard, the whole data can be visualized. What can be helpful applications for this data? Some examples, of course, with such a system, it's very good to save energy through presence and the luminance sensors. Then there is a Find My Place option, which is offered for example, desk shared offices. And we have now also like a cleaning option. So the office table, which have to be cleaned, can be marked. Or, of course, the facility manager, he can use this data to optimize the whole procedure or the office layout. There are more use cases coming up, which are all going with this data. Here we see in a formal, informal setting, very big light circles projected on the ceiling. So on the left, we see a more cooler color temperature, on the right, the warm color temperature. So this is created by a very powerful light spot which projects somehow a virtual luminaire on the ceiling. The impression is like it evokes the sun in the office, has a very open light atmosphere with very good homogeneities on the table. This fixture is flexible and is able to illuminate from 1 until 4 workplaces within the norm. And in the last situation, we see workplace. It's illuminated by a task luminaire. The design concept is very minimalistic and space saving, reducing also visual complexity. The optics is a high-tech optics which creates an asymmetric glare-free beam, and this enables for each user his personal microatmosphere. Also, this luminaire is tunable, so each user's emotions can be addressed. The luminaire is easily to move on the table and has a USB-C plug connection. It's also available in different anodization colors, giving the user the choice to express also his personal preferences and create his personal room. With this, I thank you very much for your attention, and I hand over to Kei.
Thank you very much, Kornelius. Good morning. I'm Kei Haraguchi. I'm a manager of lighting business planning at Nichia headquarters, Japan. Before my presentation, please let me introduce my colleague, Giovanni, and he is going to introduce Nichia briefly. Gio?
Thank you, Kei-san. Hello and welcome to this webinar. My name is Giovanni Vecchio and I'm in charge of sales and marketing for Nichia Germany. Nichia was founded in 1956 and is the world's largest LED manufacturer and inventor of the first high brightness blue LED, which led to the invention of the first white LED. Nichia offers a complete vertical integration from the on-die, phosphor, packaging, and processes, all made in Japan. From standard illumination to human-centric lighting and beyond. So Nichia is driven by the motto, ever researching for a brighter world, and strives to innovate in segments such as general lighting, automotive, laser, UV, display, LCD backlighting, and specialty lighting. As we heard from the previous speakers today, office lighting has specific requirements, such as tunable CCT lighting, daylight, circadian lighting, or good lighting and quality lighting that addresses safety, task requirements, and occupant needs. Nichia already supports these requirements with the recently released Light So Good LED range that consists of OptiSolis, an LED with a spectrum closest to natural light of the sun without harmful UV emission. Then VitaSolis, an LED with a spectrum that contains a higher amount of cyan compared to standard LEDs that is known to stimulate the body and help control human circadian rhythm. The third technology is the 2-in-1 tunable LED, allowing color tuning from 2700 to 6500 Kelvin within a small, single light-emitting surface, achieving superb color uniformity and high color quality. But as the title of today's webinar implies, we are here to show what's next for office lighting. With that said, I'm happy to hand over to Kei-san, who will present 2 new solutions to you. Thanks for listening and enjoy Kei's presentation.
Thanks, Gio. Let's talk about office lighting. have we seen any problem about the office lighting? By now, lighting designers simulate illuminance and they say, well, it seems we have 500 lux at desks. Okay, we are good to go. Then all set. But designed only by desktop illuminance has veiled and unveiled problems, such as fixed artificial spectrum leads to lacking sense of time and maybe lacking proper spectrum, and strong glare, dim at ceiling, high illuminance at empty space, 80 CRI. To fix these issues, Nichia develops two solutions. The first one is the circadian tune. We have a lot of birds with human-centric lighting, but most of human-centric lighting currently existing are changing CCT only. This solution can change not only CCT, but can also change melanopsin stimulation at each moment. Hereafter, I may say MR or melanopic ratio for the melanopsin stimulation. Let's take a look about LED spectrum we are offering. This is LED spectrum curve, and this green line is the visual sensitivity curve for human, which relates how human beings feels light bright. And this blue line is the IPRGC curve, which relates activation and awakeness. Higher MR means how much the spectrum, more spectrum is in this curve. LED industry, however, has very much focused on this visual sensitivity curve because our number one priority had been the energy savings. We understood the energy savings are very important, but we are now also focusing on the IPRGC curve and the high melanopic ratio, especially in the morning and the daytime. And besides that, we are also interested in the low MR, in the low CCT, and that will be happen in the evening. This slide shows the technology. Horizontal axis shows the CCT, and the vertical axis shows the MR. Black line here is the standard light. Pink light is the new circadian tune. Nichia develops this cyan color with Nichia original blended phosphor. This cyan LED creates high level of melanopsin stimulation. This combination of cyan LEDs and this 2700 Kelvin LED creates high MR in high CCT and low MR in low CCT. High MR leads activation, such as reduced fatigue, good visibility, and awakening. And low MR creates relaxation, such as feel safe and introduce to sleep. Besides those variable CCT and variable MR, this system can also achieve the good level of efficacy and 90 plus CRI. This is the demonstration movie, starting from the cyan color, now mixed with the 2700 Kelvin. Now it's a white 10,000 Kelvin, and now it's a 8,000 Kelvin, which emulates the cloudy sky, and still it is maintaining the high MR, 1.34. And now white is down into 6,500 Kelvin, and you can see very high level of the melanopic ratio. And white is now in the 4,000 Kelvin, which is used in Europe. and the melanopic ratio is 0.81. This is the same level of the standard light. And this 0.81 is still higher, still 25% higher level compared to the conventional ATCRI LEDs. So 25% higher than the conventional LEDs. Now the fixture is down into 2700 Kelvin, and you can see the very low level of the melanopic ratio. So not only having sense of time, you can also have proper melanopsin stimulus at each moment. This kind of circadian tune is our first proposal for office lighting. Let's move into our second proposal. Next technology is task and ambient. Nichia offers variable light distribution system with 3S light engine. With this system, we can make one single task and ambient lighting fixture. This kind of variable light distribution can offer both focusing and relaxing. Used to be, this kind of variable light distribution lighting fixture needs complicated mechanical system, and the transition is not so smooth. Unlike traditional system, Nichia's 3S light engine can offer smooth transition, simple design, and small glare. In the next page, I will explain its technology. 3S light engine technology is made with only two major parts. One is Nichia patented lens, and the other is LED module. For narrow beam, centered LEDs and the centered lens are used. And for the wide beam, those surrounded LEDs and the surrounded lens are used. And these systems are switched by electrically, which makes smooth transition of light distribution. Besides the simple structure, we make these light engine with small LEDs, so such as the 30 millimeter for downlight and 42 millimeter for spotlight. Even though we achieve the very narrow viewing angle, such as 15 degrees, we achieve very tight and small LES, light emitting surface. And with this LES, we can minimize the glare with the rather small cones. Here is a demonstration movie. It starts from the narrow viewing angle. You can see the irradiated surface at the left-hand side. And the right-hand side, you can see emission surface of the fixture. And you can see that only the center is emitting. Now it's a narrow viewing angle. And it is changing to the wide distribution. So you can see the wide irradiated surface and the emission area is surrounded area. So we offer the 3S light engine for simple designed task and ambient lighting fixture for proper focusing and relaxing. Here's my conclusion. Nichia brings two solutions for office lighting. The first one is circadian tune. Not only sense of time, we offer proper melanopsin stimulus and variable CCT at each moment. The second one is task and ambient. As we know, task and ambient lighting works well for good focusing and relaxing. Our 3S light engine can help to create a task and ambient lighting easier. Used to be it is complicated, now it's an easy solution. So I strongly believe the new office lighting can make us more productive and more comfortable. Thank you very much. And ありがとうございます.
Okay, that's Great, thank you for your presentations. This is very interesting stuff on a topic that is of particular importance at the moment. So we've got about 15 minutes left that I'd like to turn things over to the Q&A. Thank you everyone for asking your questions so far, and if you haven't, you still can using the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. We've also had some questions come through from registrants prior to the session as well, so thank you for these. As we've got quite a lot of questions to get through and not a great deal of time left, I'd like to ask our panelists, if you can, keep your responses as brief as possible, maybe 1 to 2 minutes so that we can get through as many questions as possible. So the first one that we've got is it's kind of a big question, so it might be difficult to keep it brief, and it's something that Mark touched on during your presentation. And the question is the era of working in an office about to end because of COVID? So I'd like to open that up to everyone. So maybe, Mark, if you want to start us off with that.
No, I think is the short answer to that. I think it's going to be a mixed economy. I think people are going to work maybe 2-3 days a week at home, 2-3 days in the office. I think what we've all discovered is there's less distraction when working at home. So focused task work is great. You're spending less time commuting, productivity goes up. But there's a real desperate need for socialization. People are really desperately missing it, and that will continue. It just means the workplace will change. So that's why I think there's going to be a move away from open plan, because I don't think that's where you're going to do the task, and it's too distracting. What there will be is a lot of loose fit meeting space, meeting colleague to colleague, colleague to client.
Sure. And Rani, would you agree with Mark's comments then?
Absolutely. I think we're all desperate to get back to meeting up with our colleagues at least once in a while. I know that's definitely the case in LightingEurope, and I see that around me as well. People do want to go back to a shared environment because you do need that human touch in the end. We have reached the limits of what we can do virtually. It's great stuff, but I really want to see and smell someone and have a conversation. And I fully agree that it means that we will reconsider and have to redesign the office spaces. So there is potential there. People will have to rethink about what they do. I experienced it in the LightingEurope office, where, first of all, the first thing I did when I arrived was we're going to install great lighting because this is not acceptable. So we're doing that, and hopefully we'll be open one day soon again to receive people and allow them to experience great lighting. You can talk about it, but you really need to experience it. And I think people will start investing around changing the space and the shape and the feel of the space so that people can come in this fluid transition between home, office, outside meetings. So yeah, absolutely. There's still future.
Okay. And Kornelius, what are your thoughts on the subject?
Also, I also think that it's accelerating the change. So it will be not nothing new, but also the need to be in the office, it will stay. Maybe it will be balanced more with the home office. There are also clear advantages, and it has to be seen which one at the end, when the COVID finalizes, what situation we will have then. At the moment, it's a little bit like waves. We have to see these directions and these directions we are experiencing. But then I'm also expecting a need for very high qualitative and versatile office lighting then.
Sure. And Kay, what are your thoughts? How is things where you are?
Yeah, I agree. But in Japan, the situation is a little bit different compared to the European countries. Now, the Tokyo area, 50 to 60% office workers are getting back to the office. But we feel the face-to-face communication is getting very much important than before. So to make it such kind of opportunity better, then the lighting work needs to work better than before. So the face-to-face meeting, maybe we need more focusing on the task and ambient lighting, or maybe better CRI, or maybe we need to think something else than before. Thank you.
Sure. And I suppose this follows on to another question where I suppose everyone's kind of touched on it a little bit, is how will the change in office environments impact on the design of office lighting, both from a designer's perspective and from a manufacturer's perspective, I guess. So maybe, Mark, if you want to start us off with that one.
I think in terms of design, it's going to be much more loose fit. If you start looking at some of the shared space working, not so much that WeWork are doing, but also Bridgeland in the UK have got a really innovative shared space, and it's loose fit, it's less commercial in feel and style, and it's plug and play, it's very adaptable. So it's not that we're ignoring the regulations in task, but we're applying it in a much more flexible, intelligent fashion. And completely picking up on Kay's point in terms of we need to light for people's faces. I mean, we've always tried to do that at BDP, but actually, if the only reason you're going into an office now is to actually talk and meet with someone, then the way in which that person is rendered to other people becomes paramount. It's not about 400 lux on a desk. It's about volumetric light and certainly in terms of flicker, color quality, distribution, glare, all of those kind of things become much more important.
Absolutely. And Cornelius, has Regent been working towards that end as well?
Yes, also I really agree with this thing, like a flexible approach we find absolutely important. We can realize this in a fixed version, but also in the flexible ones. But to have luminaires which are able to go with the building when it changes, and these changes will going to be more, so it can adapt easily on the office layout. This we consider also as very important. And the other point is that the workplaces we see, which are, some of them are maybe shifting a little bit to the home, but there will be like versatile environments which has to be equipped with very high quality lighting. So the lighting what we have then is very high qualitative, and we have to go here a step more into all these new possibilities we have now with spectra, with lighting distribution, to do it in a much better way than in the past without the LED.
Okay. Another area that I've seen a lot of discussion about prior to this, and it's something that Ourania touched on in her presentation, is about UVC and UV LEDs. So Cornelius, as a manufacturer, what chances and what risks do you see in integrating this sort of virus disinfection via UV LEDs into office luminaires? Is it something that you've looked at?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Of course, it looks very fitting just in the hole that it works, like you can kill the virus with it. If you go more deeper in, it's not so easy to integrate it directly in office concepts which are existing, because UV light, or let's say UV rays, are different to the light distribution. Also, the application is not, also still, we really have to take care of the people. So the best is really when you are not in the room, for example, when there is a disinfection. Also, when the UVC goes on the skin, it depends on the dose. There are different studies and so on. This has to be balanced. So in the best cases, when the room is empty, to make this. Also, then the virus is only killed when there is a direct, when the rays are direct hitting it. So it has maybe then a movable system even and something. So it looks like that this is then a more specialized solution, which could work, but which has to be really wisely investigated.
Sure. And Kay, is UV LED something that Nichia are looking into as well?
Yes, we do have the UVC LEDs, deep UV, and currently we need to cover the light, cover the LEDs, because it's harmful to every proteins. So yes, but we need to think about how we can make it in module and to put into the lighting fixtures.
I suppose, yeah, it's about finding that balance of how you can use it effectively.
Instead of UVC, we developed the 405 nanometer white LEDs, and the 405 nanometer attacked to the fungus. It does not work for the virus though, but at least we can protect from the fungus with the 405 nanometer, and we are going to release such kind of LEDs soon.
Okay, cool. And we've had a question come through from Mario Planek, so thank you, Mario, for the question. And it's about eco-design regulation and indirect lighting. So Cornelius and Mark, we both talked about uplighting as being a key factor in office lighting and a high indirect ratio. But the eco-design regulation kind of punishes the indirect ratio and tries to focus the light to places where it is needed. So how does it fit with the sort of trend of human-centric lighting and well-being when it seems to go against the regulation?
So there's no regulation against indirect lighting, but there is a requirement for us to light in an energy efficient fashion. But a truly sustainable lighting solution will fulfill the triple bottom line. It needs to be socially effective, environmentally responsible, and economically feasible. So there's a balance here between how much energy you're using and the job that it needs to do. Now, if you're going to light for people's faces and you're not just going to pump a very industrial engineered light down, absolute minimum energy requirement, then you're going to have to pay it. There's a payoff in terms of energy, but, and there's a big but, if you get good daylight into a space, you get daylight control, you put presence detection in, you don't do a blanket 400 lux over everything, and that in typical workspaces, the desk is only 30% of the floor area, so you don't light 400 lux into a dark carpet, and all those kind of techniques, you make sure the LED or the light source is very, very efficient and the efficiencies are going way, way up. You make sure the luminaire efficiency is very high. So you use all of those techniques, you can take 80% of the energy out of a system, and then that allows you to do something that's good for people by lighting in the right way.
And Kornelius, have you got anything that you'd like to add about that?
Yeah, I fully agree. Absolutely. Also, it's people and it's planet and people. Also, and it's important really to make a good quality for the people. And of course, this is the challenge, to balance this, to bring this together, of course, with the circular economy and everything. Yeah, this is a challenge, but we have to have very much both in focus.
And Rania, have you got any thoughts that you'd like to share?
It's a constant. I will fully support the gentleman in what they said, and it's my understanding that today the regulation indeed regulates light sources, and you can play with the efficiency of a light source, a luminaire, and deliver still quality. And that's the discussion we always have with the regulators, with the guys writing the rules. The most energy efficient lighting is the one that's switched off, but that doesn't really serve the purpose. So we always look to strike this balance of how can we develop and deliver the most savings, but still have good lighting everywhere. There's a review of that legislation planned for 2024, and that's something that we're working on very strongly already today to prepare for that review, to make sure that any additional energy efficiency requirements would not jeopardize the delivery of human-centric lighting.
Okay, great. And we've had a question here for Kay, which is sort of on the Vita Solis products that you were talking about. And there seems to be, because you talked about how it works at 5,000 Kelvin. And how do you sort of, because the sort of standard practice is 4,000, how do you change the mind of the customer to go up from 4,000 to 5,000? It seems like a pretty big jump.
That's a good question and a difficult question, though. Well, we all know the melanopsin stimulus is higher in the higher CCT, especially like a 15,000 Kelvin or maybe 10,000 Kelvin. Those ranges are not familiar with the lighting industry, especially indoor office lighting. So 4,000 Kelvin, still we have achieved the higher melanopic ratio, such as 25% higher than the conventional LEDs. So we are okay to use 4,000 Kelvin, but we still recommending the higher CCT and a higher melanopic ratio, because the outside sun is emitting like 100 times of the office lighting, and maybe we need such kind of illumination. But melanopsin stimulus higher than the standard light is still important. So we need to educate people.
Okay, cool. So I'm just mindful of the time. We've probably got time for a few more questions. So we've got one that's come through from Guy Kornetsky, which is it's kind of a two-parter. And the first part would be relevant to yourself, Kay, and Kornelius, asking what is the current R&D development for manufacturers? That's something that you can talk about.
The current R&D developments for manufacturers. Also it's this, I presented these goals, so going into personalization, into smartness, into high quality, and which is connected with this, and there are our efforts going into these directions.
Sure. And then following on from that, Mark, as a lighting designer, what is BDP's focus, and does this align with what the manufacturers are working towards?
Our current focus is really centered around the circular economy issue. That's the thing that we're putting most emphasis on, but it's not a sole R&D thing. We're also actually doing quite a lot of work in what can lighting do in the public realm in the COVID era, particularly in terms of trying to drive footfall back into our city centres and provide environments where people are actually occupying the outside space more perhaps than they were beforehand. And also in terms of workspace, exactly the kind of things that we've been talking about today is talking to the full panoply of clients, users, manufacturers, contractors, what have you, as to COVID, the future of workspace and what that's going to do. We kind of rely on our manufacturing friends to help push the technology of efficiency, light source, but we are a bridge, I like to think, so that we can have a dialogue with manufacturers about their latest ideas for product and such like, and connecting that to what we know the client's desires and needs are. And so I think we're a kind of bridge between our own client-faced, human-faced research and manufacturers' more technology-based research.
So it's about creating that balance, I guess.
Yeah.
So, okay, great. We've had another question from Olaf. Thank you for your question. And it's for Kay. And it's asking, do Nichia have any studies and future prognoses concerning OLED for lighting applications?
We are focusing on LEDs rather than OLEDs because the lighting applications need the very long lifetime and high quality of the how can I say, robustness. We have studied that the LEDs should fit for the general lighting application because of the lifetime.
And we've had another question from Olaf. Thank you for all your questions about which sort of circles back to sustainability. It's something that Rania and Mark, you both touched on. Saying, of course, we think about reducing CO2, but are there any studies about ways of producing the same results with less CO2 impact?
Well, I think I've kind of touched on that already. It's all of those other techniques. It's about luminaire, light source efficiency, intelligent design, the use of daylight control, all of those good things. But I suppose more than anything else, just don't blanket illuminate everywhere the same light level. It's just not a great way to go. It creates soulless factory-like spaces apart from anything else, and lacking in any kind of personalization or culture, and at the same time wastes so much energy.
And if I could add to that, from a manufacturer's perspective, when you do a life cycle assessment, you see that the biggest impact is the use stage and the energy use, and we've dealt with that. But what really is our focus now in Lighting Europe is the materials efficiency. So getting less stuff in the actual product from the very beginning, designing slimmer, less material using products, and really thinking about what you do with it to extend its service life. So it has a long lifetime. It can be durable. Will people continue to use it? So there's discussions and business models being developed around that as well, about the serviceability and then an extending service life of products, the reusability of these products. And of course, making sure that at the end of life, when you do get at that stage, you use materials that are more easily recyclable and reusable as well. So within Lighting Europe, there's a big discussion around how do you design luminaires that can address those two parts of the life cycle, where we tend to do quite well compared to the use one, but still more could be done.
I find that, Rania, I find that really, really interesting and encouraging. And it's, I think there's also other things, not about the materiality of the thing, but I think the serviceability of luminaires is really, really good. And we've gone too far away from the old lamp luminaire paradigm. But also it's about light miles. It's about how long and extended your supply chains are, where you manufacture relative to use, energy sourcing, so how much renewable energy are you using in your factories and such like, packaging, and an intelligent approach to that, and the relationship between manufacturers and contractors. So it's a really it's a very complicated field, but it's one that I think is really fascinating. Everyone seems to be on board with it as well. I'm finding no conflict here, but it's a great opportunity, I think, for us to come together and have further debate about it.
Yeah, fully agree. It's great fun. And there's a lot of potential there as well. As long as you make sure that everybody's allowed to innovate and find the path that
exactly
best, then what will come out will be amazing. The idea is super. Yeah, agreed.
I suppose that kind of it ties into the circular economy that you're both talking.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to follow on from that and ask Kornelius and Kay if this circular economy is something that you both have been looking into with your work at Regent and Nichia, respectively.
To have the circular economy, so LED can work for the energy savings a lot compared to the conventional light source. So what we are focusing is the still climbing up the higher level of the efficiency for each LEDs, and in the same time we are focusing on how much we can gain the higher CRI. So our goal is the higher CRI, but with the same level of the luminous efficacy to the standard 80 CRI. So we would like to help and support the circular economy from the LED technology side.
Yeah, this is a big topic, circular economy, and it's not easy. And also, as Ourania mentioned, it's very helpful now to find out some directions because this is a big effort for the luminaire manufacturers to realize such. And the question is also, yes, a longer life of the luminaires. Is this like the goal? What does it mean? Is it more like the exchangeable modules? But do they need maybe more energy in manufacturing then, which we know has a huge impact on the overall life calculation, energy calculation? So in general, I like these ideas because they're very practical, like slimmer, like less material. Of course, this is from a design point of view then often like something what is contradicting. So it's, as also Mark said, it's a very big holistic area, and we have to find very good solutions for this. And it's very interesting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We've probably got time for maybe one or two more questions because we're running over a little bit here, but it's quite an interesting discussion, so I'm keen to keep it going. And we've had one come through from Jean-Michel, so thank you very much for your question, and it's concerning biophilic lighting, because Mark, you touched on the introduction of more plant life in office spaces. That seems to be a trend that's getting more headway. So I was keen to ask Kay and Kornelius as well, I guess, if you guys have been working on sort of lighting technology that could be added into office spaces specifically for illuminating plant life.
As in general, yes, this is a trend. I would say biophilic lighting in the not biophilic lighting, biophilic design in the office. And yeah, so the question is who makes it then, if these are specialized manufacturers. But of course, there are very specifically tuned LEDs for this, which is possible to do with this, yeah.
Okay. And then just one final question, which has come through from Guy again, asking if manufacturers are looking at alternative materials to be used in the making of their luminaires, which kind of follows on from the sustainable approaches that Mark was talking about.
Here, I'll have a go. In LightingEurope, that conversation exists and people look at it. And there's also a regulatory push in that direction. There's a discussion about making mandatory requirements of minimum X percentage recycled materials in there. So the simplified mind of a rule maker is we use 3 kinds of plastics, we know how to recycle them, we use them everywhere, done. So that is clearly not the best way to achieve a circular economy realistically, if you think of all the products and all the sectors out there. But there is a discussion about identifying materials which would have also those elements to it, plus deliver what we want as as a lighting manufacturer. And there's interesting collaborations going on with these material suppliers. So there's a lot of discussion about secondary raw materials and discussions with the people who actually make them to see what works and what doesn't. Because it's interesting, there's one thing to put it in a casing, it's another thing to try to put it in the optics, for example. So a lot of good discussions taking place among some people, to my knowledge in any case.
Excellent. Okay, well, I think that is probably about all the time that we can really have. So I just wanted to say a huge thank you to Ourania, Mark, Kay, and Kornelius for your time. It's been a fascinating discussion, and a big thank you to everyone that tuned in and asked your questions as well.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thank you very much.
Have a good day or evening.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks very much.